guys, if you missed FETAL this week at Wednesday Night Live, here's a little bit of what you missed. It's important to remember a few things. One, any sexual contact outside of marriage, Scripture speaks out against. It's not supposed to happen. And granted, sometimes teenagers will get pregnant and it's not something they chose to do. But most times they made a choice that put them in that path, whether they chose to sleep with that boyfriend or girlfriend, or they chose to let things go too far and didn't have clear set boundaries that they weren't supposed to go past, and they weren't making a good choice as to what to do to protect themselves and their hearts. Anything outside of marriage is against what Scripture says. But remember also, we're called to be just like Christ. Christ was merciful. He had compassion. A lot of times girls who are pregnant, they might have made the wrong choice, but that choice has been made and it's part of the past. It's part of who they are. But they are not defined by that. And a lot of them sometimes are remorseful. But we as Christians should exercise compassion and mercy, and we should show grace. Don't get hung up on the fact that they got themselves pregnant or that someone got them pregnant against their will. Focus on the fact that they are children of God and He desires the best for all of us. Not always possible, but He desires us to be loved and to be lifted up. And He wants us to serve everyone around us, even the ones who we look down, might be tempted to look down on because of their situation. When it comes to abortion, it boils down to this. Ending a human life takes the decision out of God's hands and puts it in ours. You might be able to justify it. And I personally don't believe that there's a good reason to abort. I can't even say that I would be willing to if it would risk my wife's life. But the point is, abortion is ending human life. And it's planned. It's predetermined, which would make it effectively murder. Now a lot of states have defined life as only starting outside the womb. But as Christian, I believe that life begins at conception. And God, it even begins before that. God knew us before we were knit together in our mother's wombs. And we're to preserve human life at all costs. I can't really think of a point where an abortion would preserve a human life because you're still ending one. But at the same time, those who have had abortions, same rule applies. As Christians, we should be showing grace and mercy and compassion to them. They made their choice. They've got to live with that for the rest of their lives. They don't need us harping on them about that. So if you run into a teenager who's pregnant, if you run into someone who's had an abortion or considering it, help them make the right choices. Help them discern what God's will is in their life. And remember that God's will is not going to have you sleeping with your boyfriend or girlfriend outside of marriage. God's will more than likely will not have you getting an abortion or encouraging someone to. God's will protect human life. God's will uphold His name. God's will, if you follow it, will keep you away from situations that will put you on the outside looking in from society's standards. Now, we also covered the fact that society will tell us that as long as two people love each other and care each other, it's okay, they can have sex if they're able to accept the consequences that come with it. But sex is an adult action. It is a marriage action. And as teenagers, even if you think you're emotionally ready, you're making a decision that gives you an adult consequence. Don't make adult choices as a teenager. Society and Scripture will oftentimes tell you different things. And you don't want to follow the wrong one, because it'll lead to choices and decisions that will steer you away from God. Scripture is from God. Follow that. So that's what you missed with FETAL. Hope if you were there that this helps you, remind you, and keep you going. If you missed it, hope this encourages you to focus on what God desires above all else, our own desires, our own temptations, our own weaknesses. So So we'll catch you next time at Wednesday Night Live.